Okay, family, peace. Sorry about that. Don't know what's going on with my computer here, but it's not wanting me to stay on. Hopefully, all the technical difficulties are out the way, but I am here. I am glad that everyone here has joined me today. So, we are going to jump right and get started. I'm going to just make sure I have everything here because I had to restart my computer. All right, so hopefully that was that, and I won't have the same issue again. But welcome to my Odd Speaks. It's good that you joined me here again today. And so, if you are new to this channel here at my Odd Speaks, we are aimed to demonstrate how to maintain, how to uphold, how to build a code and culture through the principles of Ma'at. We first do that by looking within. We look at the self. So it's important that we build that culture with self first. And then we then apply that to our families. We extend that to our families. And then ultimately, the goal is to extend that to our community so that we can build a community. So as you enter, make sure, and everyone, I hope that you can hear me. So if you cannot hear me, let me know. Well, if you can hear me, let me know. So just let me know if you can hear me. Okay, just throw some numbers in the chat, throw a one in the chat, say I can hear you. Everything sounds good. We are going to get this conversation started. So let me, I have a great conversation here. I have just a great brother who I love his content. And we are going to get started here in just a moment, family. I do like to let everyone know that there are a few ways that you can support the channel and you can help the channel grow. One of those ways to help support the channel is by buying me a cup of tea. You know, I love my tea. So you can buy me a cup of tea at Buy Me a Coffee slash My Odd Speaks. Or you can donate to the channel by going over to my Cash App, which is My Odd Speaks. My Venmo is My Odd Speaks, and you can also donate through my PayPal, which is Gen Health Revolution. And let's see here. Make sure. What's going on here? One moment, family. Let me see what's going on here. Make sure everything is okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, so you can join me at you can also donate at the Gen Health Revolution, and also you can go over to my website, which is generationalhealthrevolution.com, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Generational Health Revolution. That is my Instagram. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to like, subscribe, share, do all of that good stuff to help the channel continue to grow. So, like I said, family, we are going to have a wonderful conversation here. And I have invited someone. Before I do that, I do want to head over to the chat here and see who we have here. today. So none other than my husband here. Thank you for always coming through, always doing what you do, getting off of work and jumping in the chat on during these lives. I do appreciate you for always supporting and doing what you do for the channel. So thank you. And I have my brother here. And we started at 6 p.m. EST. So sorry about that. Had some technical difficulties, but thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. And I thank you for being here. And we end this Cheryl, peace to you. Thank you for coming through. I always enjoy seeing you in the chat. And so anyone else that is new to the channel, just let me know. You can let me know in the chat, or you can let me know in the comments. But we are going to get started today. So remember that I always like to give a disclaimer before we get into the conversation. So before we get deep into the conversation, I always want to remind you that as you enter, prepare to open your minds so that we can consciously heal ourselves and name ourselves in a way that is native to who we are. So I know a lot of times when we have conversations, we try to defend things that we do not quite know or understand. And so we have to make sure that we are preparing ourselves for conversations to kind of, open our sphere, because, what we do understand, what we do know is, it's very small. So just prepare to open your minds. I started this channel so that we could heal ourselves, heal our communities, and create an environment that our children, the future generations, do not need to heal from. So, we have a ways to go, but we that's the point of these conversations, the point of MaatSpeaks. So we are going to jump into it. And I did see my sister here, Cheryl Lee. Peace. Thank you for coming through. Always enjoy seeing you, and I appreciate your support of this channel. Okay, so with that being said, this conversation that we're having today has been actually on my mind for a while. There was a clip that I had posted on my channel that discussed it, that we were kind of discussing like what some people may call Negropeans, or white people in blackface, or black versions of European. I think I actually titled the clip, "Are we trying to become like black versions of Europeans?" It was something like that. All the different names that, we say. And I didn't realize, I guess, how you post some things, but I didn't realize it was going to touch on so many nerves. And the main reason it touched on so many people's nerves was because of the picture I used. So I use a picture of the Huxtable family, which is the same picture that I use for today's live. And so I'll get into that. I did a series on celebrities and how we have this like weird obsession with celebrities and celebrity worship, to the point that we disown, or, in a sense, we stop talking to people in our family or our friends because they disagree, or just like whatever celebrity you have deemed as, as your God or whatever. And we even made them into martyrs, right? I'm gonna bring my guest on, but I just wanted to finish with that, was saying like we have made them into martyrs. And I know my guest is here, he talks about that. So I'm just gonna go ahead, bring him on. Some of you may know him, some of you may not know him, but he says a lot of things that a lot of us Pan-Africans just want to say, but he says it. He doesn't care. He goes ahead and he says what's on his mind. So I'm going to welcome to the stage my brother Diallo Kenyatta. Welcome. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
All right. I just want to say for the record, I care. I care a lot.
Okay. Well, yes, I think you say it because you do care. Yes,
Yeah,
I agree with
from the
that. You
heart.
say it because you care. Yes.
Yeah,
I think some of us fear. We have a fear of saying those things, and you say them fearlessly. So, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you
thank
saying those things fearlessly. So, I wanted to continue because this kind of comes from the series I was doing about celebrities and how we have this celebrity worship in our community. And I know that you have spoken a lot, because a good example of that uh, is Kanye West. And I know you have spoken about Kanye West a lot.
yeah. I
And
get guts.
and a lot of us, I think and I'm going to get to that at some point, but a lot of us, we don't have that. We don't have a code in our community, right?
Right.
So you have even spoken about how some of these people, some of these celebrities that now we've kind of like are wanting to distance ourselves from,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden we're like, oh, we're canceling them when we should have canceled them in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I call myself the hater anticipator and the hater innovator. No one's
Hmm.
greater because I be hating on people decades before people catch up to me.
All
And
right.
then I never get the accolades that I think I'm due for being such a visionary hater. I was hating on Cosby since the late 80s and early 90s, hating on a different world. And a lot of people that now condemn Cosby, old heads like myself, now they're finally catching up. I've been hating on Kanye since he put the Confederate flag on a bomber jacket and did pop-up stores all around Los Angeles a decade ago. And now
Mhm.
folks is just catching up. So yeah, I pride myself on, and I hating on Dave Chappelle, and folks just barely catching up to me on my Dave Chappelle hatred. So yeah, I find I get out in front of people we should be celebrities in particular, but
Mhm.
also with politicians. I was hating on Obama when he was just a state senator, and finally, but I got it, better late than never. But it's not really. I wouldn't call it hateration. I say that in jest. It's really critical analysis of
Mhm.
prominent figures, people who have a wide range of influence, or people as would identify as hashtag goals or role models or exemplars of our race.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
I think it is appropriate to critique and dissect people equal to the amount of influence and impact and reach that they have. I think that Black
Mhm.
leadership and Black influence should be a job that is very hard to obtain and very easy to lose because we're under genocidal oppression and leadership. And I'm not anti-leadership, but under
Mhm.
genocidal oppression, the quality of our leadership, the quality of our ideology, the quality of our analysis is literally a matter of life and death.
Mm. Yes. And
White folks, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
No, well, white folks can get away with electing a two-bit con man reality star guy to the presidency and still come out and on the other side, just with bickering and fighting. But, a lot of these governmental policies, social policies, cultural trends, it takes us decades and generations to recover from, you know.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
because we are in a very vulnerable state, I do think that we do have to navigate this system with a level of consciousness and
Mhm.
radical consciousness, radical insight, in order
Mhm.
to not just survive the system, but to elevate and eventually overcome it.
Mm. Right. And I know that from, I guess, from the point of view, because a lot of us, we talk about a lot how we're the minority of the minority, and then
Mm.
I add another minority on. So I'm like, we're the minority of the minority of the minority. So it's very difficult having even these conversations with people who consider themselves to be Pan African spaces, because a lot of it is still tied to value, still tied to status, is still
Right.
tied to you know all of those things. So we look at it, it's a micro of the macro, right? And so we allow celebrities to get away with a lot more than we would really allow, most likely in our own circles.
Right.
But a lot of that, again, tied to not having a code. So when it's coming from us as, I guess, the people who you would consider, I don't know, less popular, the less popular crowd, right? In having to try to build that race, kind of like that race consciousness within our community. You know, I think people can pick and choose. They pick and they kind of say, oh yeah, there is a lot of celebrity worship in our community. Because even when you hear some white people talk about it, they talk about celebrity worship in their communities as well.
Yeah, they
So
do it more than us, actually.
mm-hmm.
It just impacts us differently.
Yeah.
Like I said, they just elected literally a celebrity to the White House, a treasonous celebrity. Even by white people's standards of loyalty and treason, Trump is a traitor. The previous ultra conservative president, Ronald Reagan, was an actor and a celebrity. So, whether it's Babe Ruth or who was considered the greatest baseball player ever in a segregated league where literally the majority of baseball players were barred from participating. Latinos and Africans and Asians were barred from participating, and they've convinced themselves that Babe Ruth was the greatest and Elvis is the greatest, and Elvis, they won't even let Elvis die. They love Elvis so much. But the difference is not necessarily just the issue of celebrity. We have to define what a celebrity is. Okay. A celebrity is not, we sometimes think, well, a celebrity is someone with a lot of talent, or a celebrity is someone who can, a lot of athletic ability, or a lot of literary ability, fiction writers, or somebody who can tell jokes really good or rap and sing. But that's not what a celebrity is. I'm sure all of us know people who have tremendous talent, but they don't have celebrity. Even people who have been producing, some of my favorite rappers have dozens of albums and have toured the world a dozen times over, but they can't walk the streets. I know an international superstar who's a personal friend of mine, and we walk up and down the streets of Detroit, and some people will stop, but there's no celebrity. There's no a celebrity. And keep this in mind, for an individual to reach celebrity status, they have to be living embodiments of the highest aspirations of the system. That means you don't even have to have a talent, Kardashian.
Right.
You don't even have to do anything. But if the way your life is presented, not the way your life actually is, but if the way your life is presented to the public as some ideal, Will Smith, as some ideal existence, that's how you reach celebrity status. This system could literally turn me into a celebrity tomorrow. And I can't, I got a decent jump shot, but I can't rap. I haven't done theater since college. So I'm not a performer anymore, but they could literally make my lifestyle into a celebrity. So celebrities are living embodiments of the higher aspirations of the system. That's why Obama's a celebrity. He's not just, he is a politician, but he's also a celebrity. So when we understand that, you have to ask, when you look at so-called Black celebrities, what aspiration do they reflect? Is it African aspirations, African attainment, or is it Western, capitalist, materialistic views? So in reality, quote unquote, we don't have any celebrities. There was a time where we had celebrities. Muhammad Ali was a Black celebrity. White folks hated his guts. White folks took his title and put him in prison, but he could go anywhere in this country and get some of your grandma's, well, he don't eat shit. He didn't eat pork chops, but he can get some of grandma's steak, some of grandma's cornbread. He could go anywhere amongst. There's this term called Black famous. There was a time where there are people who were known and resonated with the masses of African people that white people were, if not oblivious to, hated this person, and we didn't care how the white folks felt about this person. And sometimes white people will co-opt these Black famous or these Black celebrities and will bring them in to their own folk. Hip hop I've been around, I'm as old as hip hop. And I remember when rap was a disrespected and hated art form and still until it started generating profits for white folks. And there
Mm-hmm.
were local rappers who were famous, and people that are hometown famous. So when we say celebrity, black celebrities, they're black in terms of their phenotype, but their
Mm-hmm.
celebrity is rooted in Western capitalist values and Western capitalist ideology. And
Right.
so when we're looking up to them, we're not looking at black aspirations. We're looking at Western aspirations.
Mm. Yeah. So one thing that kind of is like going into the Cosby effect, right? Is that's what it seems like constantly that is what has been portrayed to us. And it's kind of interesting when you say that we don't have any black celebrities, because that's what they are. They're just versions of that European or that Western ideal. And so that gives us something to aspire to, but we're still aspiring to be those versions of that. So I called this the Cosby effect, because of that attempt to operate from that kind of that dream space where men want that Felicia Rashad, that kind of that can do it all kind of woman, that Claire type. And then we have women who are wanting that successful man who cooks, cleans, handles the hands on with the kids. We kind of want that dream. And a lot of us growing up in the 90s, we have the Cosby Show, Different World. There was like Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Family, a lot of different black shows, but it was still portraying. It was portraying those Western ideals. So some of these shows, if they touched on racial issues, most of the racial issues that they touched on was like the black men or the black boys having encounters with cops. You didn't necessarily see them going on a very deep level as far as racial issues went.
They actually did. When
Mm-hmm.
you look at whenever they had the esoteric brother who listened to Raga Rastafarian
Okay.
reggae, who didn't want to conform to Western standards, he was shown as a buffoon, as a clown.
Yeah, it was
If
like
you
they were
remember,
making fun of that, right?
if you remember the conscious black guy on A Different World, he was a
Hmm.
con man and a
Yeah.
scumbag. If you
Hmm.
look at the conscious black man on A Fresh Prince of Bel Air, remember, and he said they didn't want Carlton in the black group, but they wanted Will Smith because Will Smith
Hmm.
was real black. And then Carlton dressed him up and down. So when they showed elements of black militancy, black consciousness, black back then it was called Afrocentricity or
Yes.
African centeredness. It was
Right.
also always played as an absurdity.
Hmm.
Those individual characters were always demonstrated to be on the make as con men and or insincere.
Right.
So there was several representations of
Hmm.
Afrocentricity, which was the
Yeah.
term that from that
For the
era, but it
post.
was always shown in a very disparaging light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was what I was, because when we tell the stories, and then we have to understand that we're not necessarily telling the stories, when we see a lot of these shows, because when you look at a lot of the shows, I guess except for maybe the Cosby Show, which he still had others helping to produce, helping to write, and all those different kind of things.
Mhm.
But when you look at a lot of most of these black shows, they were written, created, by white people. So you're telling it from a white perspective, which is the issue that I had with The Woman King and all of these other black movies that have been being portrayed, because you're still getting these very European, Eurocentric versions, and then they're trying to make you feel good by adding these emotional aspects or things that you perceive as being closely related to your African history. So I wanted to show this clip of, just to give some context of the things that Bill Cosby would say, because this is just an example of something that he would say regularly, just you know um I guess, you know, even before, because I was born in the 80s, so even before I was born, I think he started saying certain things pertaining to the to black people, to black women, to black men, and to black families. So I'm gonna
Cosby, right?
Mhm.
Cosby has always been a race traitor. Even his
Mhm.
very first major show, I Spy, at the
Mm.
time when COINTELPRO was assassinating, exiling, and falsely incarcerating many of our Black power and Black liberation struggle freedom fighters, he went on the white media to portray a Black spy who was doing good in the world, to motivate Black people to have a favorable opinion about the CIA, the FBI, and espionage of that America engaged in across the globe. So his media has always been weaponized against Black people. And it's very insidious because it has that candy coating of positivity on it. But he's never been loyal to any type of just aspirations of African people.
Right, right. And so I'm gonna show this clip. It's a couple a few minutes long, and then I will talk about this. One moment. Hmm. And fair use, everyone. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the show. But fair use here. And let's see here. Uh-oh. All right. And there it is.
In the old days, you couldn't book a school because behind every drawn shade was an eye. And before your mother got off the bus into the house, she knew exactly where you had gone, who had gone into the house. Parents don't know that today. I'm talking about these people who cry when their son is standing there in an orange suit. Where were you when he was 2? Where were you when he was 12? Where were you when he was 18? And how come you don't know he had a pistol? These are not.
My side is, oh, it's just me. Hey, everybody. I'm sure my aunt will be right back. You know, I think she's having trouble. Did y'all know? Go look this up. But y'all know Bill Cosby put out a rap album called the Cosnerati, which is kind of a mix between Illuminati and Bill Cosby. And it's called Bill Cosby Presents the Cosnerati, the State of Emergency. And he put out a full-length rap album in 2009 that kind of flew under the radar. But the shit is freaking hysterical because he got these rappers, one of which I was shocked. One of the rappers was one of the co-founders of Ultramagnetic MCs. And the album was set up to um, be a hip hop version of Bill Cosby's conservative personal responsibility politics, and and I kid y'all not. And so all the songs were supposed to have a positive message because Cosby felt like his lectures were being rejected by young people. All of his saying you deserve to get shot. Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
was telling them about.
no, go ahead. Thank you for that. Because I every
Oh,
time I share something, it does that. So I'm not gonna share anything else.
oh,
But
okay.
no, go ahead. Keep
Oh,
going.
I was just telling them what why you were having difficulty. I was telling him about the Cosnerati. You heard of the Cosnerati?
The Cosnerati. What's that?
It's a Bill Cosby Illuminati. Well, Bill Cosby put out a rap album back in
Okay, I did hear about
2009
that. Yeah.
called the Cosnerati State of
Oh, okay.
Emergency.
Yeah.
State of Emergency. And so I was just telling about that because I heard the album and I kind of feel like I'm the only person who suffered through that album. And I want other people to suffer as I did. You know, I'm not a martyr. I don't want to suffer alone for nobody. So go out and play the Cosnerati. And you can hear, you know, if you don't want to hear Bill Cosby preach at you, he can rap at you too. So check that out.
Yes. So with that. So with that, you know, because that was his. I don't know how much y'all heard of that, but you know, those were even what people are saying. You know what y'all are saying here in the chat. You know, him belittling the Black community instead of inspiring, and then Brother Talawa saying that traitor is the most accurate word because his politics are rooted in respectability, but it's definitely an Afro.
His politics are not just rooted in respectability. He is an I would call him a race traitor. Cosby benefited directly. Cosby became famous before Jim Crow. His fame predates desegregation. So when Dr. Bobby E. Wright whenever he give a public talk, he would say, "I stand in blood before you." And what he meant when he said, "I stand in blood before you," is that he understood that for us to, you know, be able to live lives of dignity, for me to be able to sit on the internet and talk about white folks like a dog, for Black people to be able to live lives with basic dignity, not to be daily assaulted, mutilated, and murdered at white people at their whim. A lot of other Black people had to make serious sacrifices to lose their lives, to lose their livelihood. So when you are a public figure who has benefited directly and immediately and greatly from the sacrifices of your people and your ancestors, for you to betray that makes you a traitor. And I think a lot of times Black people, we're very clear on when people offend other communities. Kanye is a good example. Kanye had been disrespecting the Black community for over a decade before he crossed other lines. Dave Chappelle has been saying reckless things about Black people and conducted himself in a way that was hostile to Black people's our communal values. But as soon as they cross the LGBTs, or as soon as they cross Jews, we all of a sudden are like, oh, they diss them, and we see other people not allowing the disrespect, speaking to and holding other groups accountable, and we seem like that's some type of magical ability. Oh, when Kanye said slavery was a choice, he didn't lose contracts. But then when he says he loves Hitler, all of a sudden he's a pariah. Why wasn't he a pariah before? Like, we really think these people have magical powers of accountability. But when we just don't have what I call racial dignity, collective or racial esteem, that when people say things that offend us, even Dave Chappelle talked about the baby could kill a Black man and have a rap career, but he can't offend the LGBTQ community and have a rap career. And Dave Chappelle said that in the context as if the LGBTQ community did something wrong. And I ask people all the time, do we expect other groups to take disrespect? And I know we don't have the power to cancel contracts, to take away shoe contracts, to kick somebody off of this white man's global satellite network. But we do have the power to not buy our children Yeezys. You know, we do have the power to turn off the goddamn NFL games. We have the power not to buy our children's their shoes. And so to where we do have power, grassroots power, which is where our power has always existed in the United States, we don't exercise it appropriately. So he is a race traitor. You cannot make the statements he has from the platform he has made them and not be a race traitor.
So what constitutes, right? What scale is a race traitor? Are you saying a race traitor is someone who has that voice? Because if race traitor is equated to the things that he's done, there's a lot of race traitors amongst us, right?
Yes, there are a lot of race traitors amongst us. And I think there was a time where that was much more, it was much more common term to call someone a race traitor. It has fallen out of favor as the political consciousness and the radical element of our community has lost a lot of status within the larger Black community. But race treason is anybody who directly, deliberately, and willingly acts against the collective interest of African people, or advances agendas against, or cooperates, coordinates, and supports agendas against African people. So you're not a race traitor if you got to go work for Coca-Cola or you go get a job somewhere. You're not a race traitor if you know, are at the RNC conventions sweeping the floors. You're not a race traitor if you're voting for your local Democratic politician because they promised to you know, some housing vouchers or some other type of reforms. You are a race traitor if you deliberately speak to, serve, and endorse genocidal campaigns. Cosby was made excuses for mass incarceration, which is genocide, according to the Genocide Convention, is defined to detain and inform and to any way obstruct people's capacity to reproduce themselves is an act of coordinated state genocide. And Cosby stated that, I don't know how deep we're getting into this, but just chime in if you need to, but Cosby said that we didn't keep up our end of the bargain. And what he meant by that is during the civil rights movement, which he didn't truly participate in, people love showing that radical Cosby and the Afro talking all that shit. But he mostly, when in the earlier stages of the civil rights movement, before white folks gave Cosby the permission to talk, he would say, I'm not a comedian. A Black comedian, I'm just a comedian. He was post-racial. People think that post-racial shit came with Obama, but it goes all the way back to Shirley Chisholm. When she was running for president, she was talking about, I'm not running to be a Black president, I'm just trying to be a president. And Negroes of stature during the pre-civil rights era were running away from Black. I just want to be seen as human. I just want to be seen as a person. And so Cosby said his position was that throughout the civil rights movement, white people made a deal with Blacks. And the deal was that they would give us our civil and human rights. They would give us opportunities. They would give us access to their systems and institutions, universities, laboratories, government positions, that they would cease and desist their hostile and subversive acts against Black people. And in exchange for that, Black people are expected to be upstanding citizens and responsible citizens. So he said that when white folks gave us all these rights, all this freedom, all this opportunity, we took it and decided to sag our pants, speak broken English, and squander the opportunities and the concessions that white folks gave to us. And he said we did not keep up our end of that bargain. At that time, if no other time, Cosby became an agent and an ally of our oppressors, i.e. a race traitor. Beyond his art, beyond his performances, his ideology and politics is hostile to the interest and advancement of African people. And this is before the allegations and all of this. I mean, if you go read books by like John G. Jackson and the Soledad brother, they write in those books as early as the early 60s. Our Black revolutionaries were calling out Cosby and his treasonous behaviors in Africa.
And something that I was thinking about when you were talking about, because if you go and you look, there are some things that he talks about when it comes to you know, racism, education, and things like that. But when you hear him actually talking, it's very safe, but it's still coming from this what I would consider like a very classist kind of way, because when he's even talking about politics, he's talking about politics in a way where he is saying that this particular white man who's a very racist, like you can't dismiss that the man is racist, right? Because he's still in politics calling Black people niggers and stuff like that. So that's common knowledge that the man is racist, but then he's talking about it in a way where he's offended because he is being looked down on as a Black man who has money. So, but a lot of people try to portray him as this civil rights activist, um, but he's talking about things that are really just only applying to a certain, a particular part of the Black upper echelon, as I guess you would say. And so I think about how that even goes into what we were talking about earlier about celebrities, and the way that I look at any type of entertainment is that it's trying to send some type of program, some type of messaging. And so even with the TV shows where we say, okay, well, that's our representation, how much of that was still, in my estimation, was still a programming, because it was wanting you to buy into this integrationist kind of mindset. Because, and I'll get to, I'm gonna stick to the Cosby Show for right now, because I want to get to a different world, because that was a whole different kind of ball game as well. But just
Garbage.
but even when you go like to the Cosby Show, right? You're talking about people who are living there, Black people living in Brooklyn in that time. Claire's she's a lawyer, he's a doctor, and so it's still very much in this trying to portray a certain image onto Black people, and we're taking it as, oh well, he's representing us in a positive light.
Yeah.
But if you're saying that, okay, he's an agent, what is that really portraying to the Black, to the Black community? What is he trying to project?
Well, let's take it from here. The question that you have on the thumbnail is, did the Cosby Show fail the Black community?
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to give a one-word answer to that, I would say kinda.
Okay.
You have to look at the Cosby Show from two different perspectives. First perspective is, it is a work of art.
Mm-hmm.
It is media art.
Okay.
It is and it is a almost flawless work of art.
Mm.
If you go back and watch the Cosby Show, the comedic timing, the dialogue, the blocking, if you look at any type of technical or critical breakdown of the Cosby Show production, it is a masterpiece of sitcom television. Probably one of the top 5.
Okay.
Every episode I've seen, and I would say I've probably seen most of the episodes. So as a work of art, it is an absolute masterpiece. But you also have to say all art also is propaganda. Like the Mona Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
The Mona Lisa is probably the most famous painting in the Western world, and by extension, under Western hegemony, the world. And people look at the Mona Lisa as in terms of the technique of the painting.
Mm-hmm.
But also they say that the Mona Lisa represents the height of Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even been fight between France and Italy about Italy saying, this is an Italian masterpiece, and France is like, no, it's a Renaissance masterpiece. And an Italian man ran and stole the Mona Lisa to take it back to Italy, and it's funny how, Italy and these other European countries complain about Africans wanting their artwork back. And we don't even know the history of like German, European, British, Celts, and all these crackers fighting over the stuff they stole from each other. They ain't even gave back the shit they stole from white folks. We thinking we gonna get the stuff but that's a different discussion. But there is political, cultural, historical significance. The time that painting was made, what it is to articulate, what it articulated when it was created versus what it was to articulate to the other people. So it's the same way with this, high art.
Mm-hmm.
The Cosby Show as a tool it's a wonderful work of art, but it is a very insidious tool. It is a dangerous and insidious tool. Now, first of all, white folks we know for a fact, we got documented evidence that white folks are capable of creating positive representation and positive Black media. But why is it so rare and few and far between? Like Professor William Mackey would always say, we really believe white folks will do right by us when they figure out how to. Like their wrongdoing is a byproduct of their incompetence. as opposed to their agenda and their direct agenda. So here's the Cosby Show. And this is why the Cosby Show is an insidious tool and work of propaganda. The Cosby Show was aired at the beginning of what is now being called the Ronald Reagan Revolution. What is the Ronald Reagan Revolution? It is the birth of neoliberalism, global capitalism. It is the death knell. Reagan's election was the death knell. Within less than a full decade, the Soviet Union would collapse and the United States would become the sole world superpower to impose global white hegemony married to industrial and post-industrial digital capitalism. So what did the U.S. just go through? The United States went through a civil rights struggle at the same time as it was going through a Cold War. As far as Black people, we had won concessions from the oppressor. The civil rights movement had failed. White people used to sit at home wishing and praying that Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference would come to their town, and it was like a party for them. They was like, I get to go spit on Black people. I get to throw stones, bricks, and rotten eggs and cans of soup at Black people. I get to sick dogs on Black people and have them rip at Black people's gen, because you know they train those dogs to go for your genitals and your breasts. Whenever you see those dogs attacking, they're going for the midsection.
Right.
So I get to have dogs attack and water hose them, and then the Black people would sit there treating their wounds. We had that congressman that just died, and he was famous because he got his head split open by some redneck. So they didn't give a damn about that. Do you know how many times Black folks went marching into some town, got the hell kicked out of us, have our leaders say, don't raise your hand, don't fight back? That had been going on for over a decade. We was singing, we was praying, and we was trying to have a moral victory. That shit was white folks who had their feet up and was like, let them come. King would announce where we going to Selma. Well, we're going. He came up here to the north side of Chicago. And my wife's grandfather was his bodyguard. It's a famous picture of a brick ricocheting off of King's head. And my wife's grandfather was trying to catching bricks for Dr. King. Unarmed, no retaliation. We didn't start getting concessions, real concessions, until Kwame Ture, who was Stokely Carmichael, who was in the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. H. Rap Brown said, enough of this. If you put your hands on me, I'm going to break your hand. And Malcolm X started to resonate, and we burned down 200 cities. And Black people started shooting. There's a book called We Will Shoot Back. There are several accounts, the Deacons for Self-Defense, and Black people started aging in armed insurgency, armed retaliation, domestic terrorism, as they would call it today. And that's what brought us over the threshold to the point where Dr. King called for a revolution. Long story short, white folks had to give us concessions. They wanted to pretend like, oh, the reason we gave concessions is we saw how much us throwing feces and urine and spitting on you, we saw how bad that was. And out of the goodness of our heart, we decided to give you the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Act and affirmative action and all these concessions out of the goodness of our heart. So white folks and then the white people are like, damn, we got a non-alignment movement in Latin America. We got a armed decolonization struggle. Che Guevara's down on Bolivia. Che Guevara's in the Congo. We got a world uprising. And we got an upsurgency in our backyard. And we got a surgency across our empire. So we got to quell. We don't have, and the optics are, if we kill these Black people, then all the Negroes from the rest of the world are going to go to the Soviet Union. So in that atmosphere, they had this time where say, we're going to give Black people concessions. That's the deal, right? We're going to give Black people some concessions, but we're not going to give those concessions to the Black people who fought us. We're not going to give those concessions to the black people who rose up against us. We're going to give the concessions that were won by the revolutionaries to the reactionaries. We're going to give the victories and the rewards won by the black militants. We're going to give them to the black pacifists. To the black pacifists. So that's when Negroes like Bill Cosby and all these other safe Negroes, Sammy Davis Jr., in politics and in entertainment, were pushed to the fore to enjoy all the freedoms, coming through the front door, sitting in first class, being able to rent out the penthouse at the Hyatt Regencies. The Negroes who didn't fight were the only people in the position to afford that shit. So anyway, then after that, you had this era of what was called benign neglect. Benign neglect is when they said, black people, you got what you wanted, now go about your business. And this is what Dale Jones called white people loosened up to get a tighter grip. At the very time, the day after they gave us the concessions, they started subverting us. At the same time they gave us concessions, if we can't do racial oppression, we'll drive them to poverty and do economic oppression. We'll drive them into poverty and then criminalize the very efforts they make. So that is the new Jim Crow. And so at that same time of the Reagan Revolution, where black people were losing all of the ground we had obtained from our generations of struggle, the civil rights movement, the black liberation struggle started since the end of Reconstruction. Garvey, it's over 100-year struggle. Black people got the right to vote in 1868. And the Voting Rights Bill came in 1964. 100-year struggle to get what we already had, right?
Right.
And at that time, where white people were regrouping to take us back down, to put us in a new Jim Crow, to institute neo-segregation, to move from racial discrimination to economic discrimination, from racial oppression to economic oppression, from racial incarceration to economic, and then black people, we went from being a race to an economic class, the permanent underclass. We got the most positive show we've ever seen. Something we didn't know could be done. Black people shown in a positive light on the global broadcast system. A positive black show to superimpose itself over black people losing more ground than we had since the Reconstruction era. Literally every civil rights concession. And so then we were told, what did that show tell us? The opportunity is there. You can get it if you want it, but it's on you. Progress does not come from you collectively locking arms with other black people and fighting against the system. Progress comes as you, as an individual, working within the system. Now, progress used to be understood to be resistance, but now progress became understood to be submission. That was the message of the Cosby Show, and all the resulting media, especially A Different World, even drove the message harder because it was aimed at young people who were the ones who were born into the post-civil rights era and didn't have to, like my aunt, when she would go to the library, she would have to sit under the desk of the white librarian to read books because it was a segregated library in Missouri. And when that librarian retired, she said, don't ever come back here because, you know, Negroes aren't allowed. My mother sat on the back of the bus, rode segregated buses around Kansas City. You know, my father and his father was ran out of the Deep South by lynch mobs. So our generation was born post 1968. People born in the 70s. The message had to be, you know, how did we come here? Well, things used to be bad. Then they got really good. And then we made them bad because we didn't behave ourselves properly.
Right.
So that was basically the propaganda. It turned a collective struggle, the benefits of a collective struggle, and black people always understood we got to stick together. To turn is you do you, I do me. I get mine, you get yours. And if you don't make it, it's not racism. It's not the systems and institutions of white hegemony. It's not the legacy of chattel slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and legalized discrimination. If you don't make it, it's because you didn't work hard enough, because you didn't have gifted hands. And that's what's the message of the Cosby Show that was so insidious, and you had black people like me living in subsidized housing projects, living in the PJs, watching this show every day, like, oh, I too, if I keep my eyes on the prize, I too can make it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that's the whole idea that I have been preaching about Black celebrity anyway. Because a lot of the most all I say most, but all of these celebrities are positioned in a way where they are allowed. They're allowed, right? Like we're still we can call these different places in the celebrity world, whether it's sports, whether it's movies, whether it's entertainment, all of these different forms of whatever you want to call them, plantations or whatever, but they're allowed to be in the head, and it gives us something to continue to aspire to. And so when we see these different kinds of shows, and so one thing that I did hear going to a different world, a lot of people talk about how people, especially my age group, they talk about how a different world. I would not have been in an HBCU if it wasn't for a different world. And so when you start looking at HBCUs, because one thing that they say about Cosby is they say, oh, well, he's giving so much money to HBCUs. And then I say, well, what is he giving money to? Because when I was young growing up, I had a whole different, and I told my husband this, I blame FUBU, because anytime I would hear HBCU, I thought it was like the equivalent of FUBU, for us by us. So I thought an HBCU was supposed to be a institution that was created by us, and it was for us. But even when I looked up the institution, the college that he gave the most money to, which is Spelman, right? And so you go and you look at Spelman, and you look at the history of Spelman, you look at who created Spelman, right? You look at the two women, they were so-called missionaries from the North. And, when I hear missionaries, I always go to missionaries in Africa, so that's what I think when I hear missionaries. But there are missionaries who said that they wanted to start a school for Black women. And then you see who these missionaries are. So I can't share. I'm not gonna risk sharing anything else. But the missionaries, it was Sophia Packard and Harriet Giles. They're the founders. So anybody who wants to look at that, you can go and you can look at who these women were. And then on top of that, the money, and Spelman gets its name because of Rockefeller gave all of this money. And so then they end up naming the college after his wife, because she was supposed to be like anti-slavery. But then when you start thinking about that, these institutions, these HBCUs are still being created, they're being started, founded, created, however you want to, from white people, from white minds, then you have to understand that these are not our institutions anyway. So when someone says, oh, it's because of him or because of a different world that caused me to go to an HBCU, you have to still think about, well, why is that different than any other institution? How is that different than any other institution? So my train of thought is that all it did was make Black people who thought that they could not go to college feel like they could go to college. They could go into these institutions, and most people are not getting scholarships. They're doing it through loans. So then it creates a whole nother problem where now a lot of Black people are in debt because they went
How that happened when Cosby paid all our tuition? I hear everybody talk about how much money Cosby gave to college. I ain't met one person that had a Cosby buck in their pocket. Exactly. I've never met a Black person say, my tuition was paid by Bill Cosby. I meet a lot of Black folks who reference all that money, but I ain't seen it. Mm-hmm. I ain't seen no Black person who's educated as a byproduct of Cosby. And even if that Negro pops up, because they love to prove me wrong, even if that Negro popped up, who cares? Because here's the thing. When you talk about donations, and in the not-for-profit world, there's this thing called auditing. So when you donate money, especially large sums of money, it has to be audited. I know this because my wife and we did some auditing of grants and even had a consulting firm to do that. So when you give money to a cause or to an institution, you have to clearly state what that is for. So one of the not-for-profits I worked for was the Stop the Violence Institute, which was worked off of a Kellogg Foundation. So when you when you give that money, Kellogg Foundation gets to write off millions of dollars for all these wealthy white folks, and the B'nai B'rith also put money in that. They said, well, it's the Stop the Violence Coalition. And so they look at the violence, domestic violence, street, intimate violence, and all the forms of violence, and what are the programs you are going to fund in order to reduce these violence. So prior to the money and the program initiatives, these were the violence rates. Prior to the program initiative, now the violence rates are reduced. That's the audit, right? To test the effectiveness of the fund of the programs and to really determine the worthiness of the programs to receive ongoing funding. Now, there's a catch-22, because if you do your job too good and you solve the problem, you put yourself out of work. When I was in that nonprofit arena, we always say we want to work ourselves out of a job, which is a lie. But so if Cosby says, well, I'm giving this hundreds of millions of tax deductible donations to this institution in order to create what? More Black people in fields, professional fields, in order to what? Reduce Black incarceration, reduce Black unemployment, to increase Black presence within certain fields or certain industries. So we go back to the 80s and 90s, and we see that none of the shit Bill Cosby claimed he was kicking the money in for to accomplish has been accomplished. Now, Cosby's going to blame us, of course, because we didn't keep our end of the goal. But so it's really nothing, because when you audit it and you determine, because that's all I do. Whenever somebody come to me and talk about somebody rich and famous giving anything to the masses of our people, if there's no published audit, I just do my own audit. What are you claiming to do this for? And if it's not on the other end, like Oprah's school, she got a $50 million school to lift girls up, a girls only school to empower and uplift girls in South Africa. And 2 decades after the school, South Africa rape, sexual mutilation, and all the shit that she claimed she opened the school for failed. So we don't have to applaud Oprah, because Oprah is a failure too. People think if you got money, you don't fail. But people with money fail on a larger scale than people without money. They're greater failures. Because if just having a shit ton of fiat made you successful, that's not how we define success, especially when you want to become this benevolent person who claims to want to help somebody. So his money and now that HBCU, and I'm not a fan of HBCUs, and I got a lot of people I'm cool with that go to HBCUs. I know some people that work at HBCUs, and I talk about HBCUs like a limp dog, and I just go off of the facts. HBCUs existed prior to emancipation. HBCUs existed alongside chattel slavery of African people. HBCUs operated comfortably in the midst of Jim Crow. HBCUs are not liberation or liberatory institutions. HBCUs are not a threat to the status quo. They are not revolutionary. They are not radical. They're not even progressive. So being that it's none of those things, what besides just be Black have they done to make us worthy of their applause? If you go to, don't ask me the website, I'll try to, but there's a website that pretty much charts the progress and accomplishments of HBCUs. And they got the stats. 80% of all Black judges graduated from HBCUs. Upwards of, depending on what region of the country, over half, 54% to upwards of 74% of all Black lawyers graduated from HBCUs. Close to a little over half of all Black physicians went to HBCUs. Applaud. But let's go and do the evaluation. With all this Black judges coming out of HBCUs, what is the Black incarceration rate? What is the Black recidivism rate? So having Black judges on benches dispensing white justice has not translated to a benefit for Black people. Let's look at these Black physicians. Black life expectancy, Black infant mortality, Black maternal mortality, did I say chronic disease? Black chronic disease and the crippling effects of are all skyrocketing. So having these Black doctors dispensing white allopathic medicine has not translated into a benefit for us.
Right.
So if you're the kind that's just purely aesthetic to say, hey, as long as I see a Black face, I don't care if Obama is ordering bombing raids on the Horn of Africa and expanding AFRICOM to more countries than in all other presidents combined. I don't care because I get to look and see Michelle Obama's ball gown. It just does me pride to go into with my sugar diabetes and my chronic heart failure and my pre-dementia. But as long as I'm sitting across from a Black doctor getting these toxic, ineffective medicines, I don't care. If my son's getting sentenced for the same crime more than 3 to 4 times the average sentence of a white person who does the crime, I don't care because it's a Black judge, Black defendant, and a Black prosecutor. You know, you look at Atlanta, which is our Wakanda, according to T.I., it has the highest in all the country, the highest rate of income inequality in Atlanta, in a country that has the highest rate of income equality in the world. So Black faces in high places. Remember this from Dr. Amos N. Wilson. Black collective advancement is inversely proportional to Black individual elevation within the system. What does that mean? The more Black doctors you have, the more Black chronic disease and the worse Black life expectancy. The more Black law professionals you have, the more Black law professionals you have, judges, prosecutors, the more, like right now, there's a Black judge blocking Mumia from getting a new case. A Black woman. We saw that Black judge go out and hug that white cop that killed that Bolton boy in his own house. So the more Black legal professionals, the higher Black incarceration. The more Black MBAs, we got more Black MBAs in this country right now than we ever had in any other time in history. The fewer Black businesses we have. Right. The more Black billionaires we have, the more Black poverty we have. We got more Black billionaires than we ever had and have a lower share of the overall wealth of this country. And I know this seems contradictory, but when you really understand power dynamics and capitalism and our history overall, you know, and people, oh, you don't want us to have money, you don't want us to get paid. They run with these facts. But you know, that's the whole. When we more Black educators we have, the higher dropout rates.
Right. So even when we think about that, right? Like when it comes to, because I know having conversations about capitalism, a lot of and I don't want to just say Black men, but I'm gonna say Black people, especially the ones who are you know, who are really promoting owning your own businesses and things like that. We have a hard time trying to disconnect from capitalism and understanding that there's someone who has to always be, there's someone at the bottom, you know. So even when you hear someone like Cosby who talks about the poorest, because when he's talking, he's not really talking about us. He's talking about people who he perceives as the lowest people he would never encounter, never have a conversation with. He's talking, and that's what baffles me, is because he does not necessarily have he's not necessarily having interactions with those people, but he's talking about those people.
He's not talking to us though. He's talking to white people. Bill Cosby hung out in the Playboy Mansion. Yeah. So he's not speaking to Black people to educate Black people. He's speaking to Black people to win accolades from white people.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter how we take it. And we the type of Black people that as long as you successful, as long as you up there, we gonna love you anyway. And any of your detractors from within the community, y'all just gonna call us haters. Gonna call us jealous. I mean, I just had a famous rapper call me a groupie. For telling him that Dave Chappelle and other Black celebrities are not the answer for Africa's problems.
Right.
You know, and I got called a groupie and didn't speak to any of my specific criticisms or my specific assertions.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that dismissive language is another form of elitism. But now we've adopted so many Western values. There
Mm-hmm.
was a time, even within my lifetime, where people who had a lot were the idea was that you should remain humble, don't forget where you come from, and that it's gauche or inappropriate to flaunt your wealth, especially when people who don't have it are around. Oh shit, it was Talib. Okay. But now that greed is good, and you want to flaunt your wealth, and that one low vibration plate lady posing in front of multi-million-dollar cars and stuff like that. So uh, um our value system is what I call a cultural contamination. We
Mm-hmm.
believe that we can have black capitalism. There's a brother that keeps mentioning conservatism, black conservatives. And, you know, and I got some thoughts about, you know, black conservative and black capitalism. Those things don't exist. There's no such thing as black capitalists or black conservatives, even though they appear to be very prominent people. Capitalism does not mean that you have a lot of money. It's like Kanye. Sheun Kuti said that Kanye didn't have $1 billion. He had 1 billion white promises, you know? And so capitalism means you own and control the means of production. It doesn't mean that you own a business. Retail and even warehousing. It means like Elon Musk's father owned an emerald mine. So if you want to be a capitalist, but you don't own and control the means of production, you are not a capitalist. And the only difference between black people like Jay-Z and Beyonce and black folks like us is consumption capacity, meaning that black folks like Jay-Z and Oprah and even Obama, they have the ability to buy and consume anything that white people produce and are willing to sell to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a position of power, as we've seen the rug pulled out of too many wealthy Negroes over the last century.
Right.
We've seen Negroes like that one brother that wanted to buy a media company, Byron Allen.
Yeah.
He just got turned down. He wanted to cut a check for some media institution, and they were like, "You don't want that." So they let him go buy the most expensive house in America. He has like a $300 million house. He has like the top 3 most. You can have a house. You can have cars. You can have jewelry. You cannot have a mine. You cannot control or own a shipping lanes. You cannot have rights over international waters or commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan can put his name and his likeness all over shoes. Does he have factories? Does he have the textile mills? Has he ever even been to one?
Mm-hmm.
So black people, we are allowed to get into the economy and operate at the economy at the lowest level. And by the lowest level, I don't mean by lowest income level. I mean by the lowest power level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, white elites are saying, well, our economy is going to transition from a carbon-based economy to a renewable economy between now and 2050. And these are the benchmarks. And we're going to have an international summit, and we're going to call all the leaders from all over the world and say, listen, you have up until this day to align your economy and your extractive industries to fit into this paradigm we created. That's power. Our black elites are not there. They are not at those tables. Though our black leaders get those instructions, and then they come to us and say, well, we're going to do this, when they were given those marching orders by our oppressors. Our leaders are their servants. And any black person that portrays themselves as anything other than an oppressed member of the black liberation struggle is either self-deluding themselves or they know it and they're lying to the rest of us, like Obama. Obama understands this. Right now, Obama, having been president for 2 terms, knows a lot of the insidious agendas being carried out against the Caribbean, Central and Latin America, where the most black people outside of Africa live in Central and Latin America. The agenda for black people in the heat knows this. And they're very secure with Obama knowing these things. These essential what they call, like they were on Trump. They trust Obama with their secrets more than they trust Trump. And we still posting pictures of the Obamas holiday photos and listening to Michelle Obama give them parenting advice. You know, it's really disgusting. But yeah, these black elites are our enemies, and there are even more serious enemies because they're internal enemies, which make you extremely vulnerable to your external enemies.
Yeah, so I do see some I saw a few questions in the chat, so I'm gonna get to the questions in just a moment. But even you know what you're saying, because I think there's there's a consensus kind of that, well, I'll put it this way. It's hard for us to kind of understand, or not understand, but you know, we have a hard time doing, you know, nuance, and one of those things, it goes to what you were saying about how it was, you know, what the program, the Cosby Show and all of that, it was actually, you know, very well done, but at the same time, the problems that came from that. And so what I see though now, because when we talk about, where you're talking about like capitalism and talking about how a lot of these black people are, or celebrities, a lot of the black celebrities are put in the forefront, we are now bringing that into we have that is present in our communities. So now we have an issue, which I think a few people had even talked about that, when it talks about like ideology and how important that could be. So how are we navigating this? How are we navigating the whole idea that a lot of our ideologies are coming from, um it's a connection to that celebrity worship, right? Like, because we look at their ideology as being supreme. How you don't have anything, right? You're not valuable, so you don't have the right ideology because I see them as successful. So how do we even navigate that?
Well, I say ideology is all. Ideology is the most important thing that a people can possess. It's more important than land. I know people are like, oh, we need land, we need businesses. It's more important than weapons. Because you can give a people with the wrong ideology all of the material resources, land, and weapons in the world, and they'll use it to slaughter each other on behalf of their oppressor if they don't have the ideology. My ideology is revolutionary Pan-Africanism, the unification and mobilization for all African people across the world to subvert global white hegemony, to dismantle the systems and institutions of global capitalism, and to reinsert African communal values and socialism in spaces that Africans dwell, and also, which is also equally, if not more important, the restoration of global ecosystems. You know, which means also removing the pollutants and allowing for the biodiversity to reassert itself. My ideology is very clear. I understand at what levels I can work on this, and every day of my life I conspire and organize to bring this about. And I understand this is a multi-generational struggle that did not start with me, and it will not end within my lifetime.
Right.
So that's my ideology. If you are adopting another person's ideology or another racist ideology, even if it's not a particularly hostile ideology, you see a lot of black people getting into Eastern mysticism and Eastern belief systems and things of that nature. You are not acting on ideology. You're acting on indoctrination. You know, or as Dr. Clark said, if you believe in a religion that is alien to your culture, you become the spiritual slave. So it's not like, well, you over there being African, I'm over here with the white man being capitalist. You are not a capitalist. There are no black capitalists. There are no black conservative. As Dr. Claude Anderson asked the question, what does a black conservatism was born out of white people who wanted to maintain the monarchy when white folks were making a transition from monarchical systems to democratic republics. They say, well, we're going to be, instead of being ruled by Monarchs were going to be ruled by elected representatives. And the conservatives used to be called the royalist.
Mm-hmm.
Conservatives used to be called the royalist. And they have what is called the authoritarian point of view. You need a strong, unquestionable core leadership. So a
Mm-hmm.
black conservative, there's never, when that was happening, we were enslaved and colonized. So we had no say or no part in that construction of that political paradigm. So if you are a black conservative, you are a black person that says that we should remain subservient to the systems and institutions of white hegemony. And if you are to remain subservient, then you already asserted that I will not exercise power. I will not try to assert my will or my point of view within it. I will just carry out the orders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So black conservatives aren't acting off of their own values, their own insight, their own imagination. They are literally husk. They are shells. So there is no such thing as a black conservative. What black conservatives are, Uncle Toms, handkerchief head Negroes, house Negroes. There are all kind of names we have for them. And now we want to be polite and call them black conservatives. And they knew when the house slave came around, the house slave didn't come around representing their interests, their values, their agendas. They were proxies for the oppressor.
Right.
And that's what black conservatives are. Black people who have surrendered, black people who are complacent, and black people who want to cooperate and coordinate with the oppressor against the interest of the people who want to oppose the oppressor. Now, there's this rhetoric about, no, conservatism is about family values. And Cosby, we know Cosby is not family values. Even if you take away the rape, he still is the furthest thing. Like I said, his favorite hangout in the 70s was the Playboy Club. His homie was Hugh Hefner.
Right?
So that whole family values, Judeo-Christian values, the Protestant work ethic, that is rhetoric. That is not what conservatism is. Conservatism is the power and the resources remain in the hands of the people who currently have it, and the people who don't got it ain't gonna get it. And so that's what, and all that family values bullshit. You just saw the Republican Party try to reelect a man who was spanked in a hotel room by a porn star and paid her $50,000 to keep her mouth shut. Now, if I don't know what else these so-called conservatives should do to expose to the world that they don't give a hot, dirty damn about these values, and conservatism is actually about holding power. There is no black conservative. There is no black capitalist. But if there were true, in order to be a true black conservative, you have to establish independent black power. And then you have to say this independent black power, whether it is just or unjust, is the what we should sustain. And anyone who challenges this independent black power, I'm going to fight against to preserve this independent black power. Because that's what because guess what? If there was a revolution and Africa was united and liberated and black power was the order of the day, guess what? I'd become a conservative. I say this system of my people must be preserved. And anybody that challenged it, we don't want all this, y'all, because, if I was the black, I'm like, y'all all got to be vegan. Y'all all got to be secular. All our institutions were secular. All our veganism, animal rights, sustainability. You ain't going to drive no SUVs. Nobody gets to be a millionaire or a billionaire because nobody does $1 million or $1 billion worth of work. So you're a parasite, no parasitism. A lot of people would hate that. And they would start to be like, nah, I want to be like Jay and Bay. I want to fly private helicopters like Kobe. I want ball chasers to make $1 billion for chasing balls, pro basketball, and they want to bring back that world. And I'd be there in a stuffy suit. Well, oh, you should control yourself. You shouldn't do that. I'd be the conservative, but I can't be a conservative unless I want to betray my people. So black people must not just be liberal, because liberalism is just a branch, is a form of conservatism. Liberalism is conservatism that says we should let people from the outside have a chance to come on the inside. Obama can be defined as liberal or centrist. He's more of a centrist.
Yeah.
So black people ideologically must be far left, left-wing radical. That is the only appropriate stance when you are under genocidal oppression. The only appropriate position to take against the established order is oppositional, right, far left, radical revolutionary ideas. And radical does not mean what they say it means. It does not mean burning stuff down. Radical means fundamental analysis. Radical is a botanical term. It is a term used in botany, means the germ seed.
Mm-hmm.
And what a radical does is look at the root, does not simply accept the surface. So you'll see a lot of prominent Black people like Dr. Umar or just, most Minister Farrakhan, they look at symptoms or the surface. Oh, Black people, we don't have money. So how do you get money? We open businesses. We have our own banking. We let the Black dollar bounce in the Black community. That is a surface analysis. That is a reactionary, knee-jerk response. Poverty means, but do you ask white folks who have all the money, did they get money from being economically responsible and making the money bounce in their community? Where is the origin of their wealth? Conquest, genocide, slavery, ongoing military campaigns, and the extirpation and exploitation of other people's resources. So if you want capitalist wealth, well, here's the bottom line. The way people become wealthy is by defining wealth. That's it. You define what wealth is. White people didn't come to America and say, well, what do the Native Americans use as currency? Whether it's pelts, they said, no, this is what we use as currency, and we're going to topple your economic system and impose ours. Same thing they did when they went to Africa. Didn't nobody work no jobs in Africa? There were guilds. There was no employer economy on the continent of Africa. You would get initiated into a guild, you would perform your services, and you would get status and prominence based on a very complex network of interactions. But we were wealthier than the people who enslaved us.
Right.
When the white man came to interact with the Arawaks and the Tainos, there were literally like gold and diamonds on the soles of people's shoes. They didn't give a damn about so-called precious metals. So the way the white folks did not become rich by competing with and working hard, they became rich by defining what wealth is. And they defined wealth in terms of what they had and excluded what other people had from their definition of wealth. So that is a radical analysis. If you say, well, how do we bring Black people out of poverty? By subverting the standing system and redefining what wealth is and redistributing the resources that were taken from us, but we can't buy back the resources, and that kind of money doesn't exist. So ideology is the most important thing. Before you can do anything else with anyone else, you have to determine their ideology. And it doesn't mean that if people don't have the exact same ideology as you do, that you can't work with them, but you have to make sure your ideology resonates or aligns with what you believe. Right. I'm an atheist, I'm a secularist, but does that say anybody who has, if someone is Ifa, or if someone is the Kemetic tree of life system, then I'm like, well, no, we don't have the same ideology, because some spiritual systems or value systems do align. Respect for nature, and reverence for nature. And you believe nature is a byproduct of some supernatural convergence, where I understand nature is a byproduct of evolution. But we could still resonate. So ideology, you can only work with people that have common or resonating ideologies with you. But we think, oh, well, it's just about money. Everybody eats, so let's all get food together. And you allow Black capitalists or so-called Black conservatives, so-called Black capitalists into your circle, that greatly weakens and diminishes us. So we have to be mindful of internal and external enemies.
Yeah, I want to have I'll have to bring you back for that conversation, because we need to have that on a more in-depth.
I'm sorry if I got off track. Yeah.
No. It's good.
He's a race trader. Let's get back to Cosby. The Cosby Show is good. Enjoy it if you want, but look at it from a critical lens. And so the same thing with A Different World. And the main message of A Different World is success was defined as making it out of your community instead of elevating your community. And you'll notice in later seasons of the Cosby Show, when they started bringing in the younger new wave of actors, and you had the most brilliant Black mathematician in the form of Dwayne Wade. What's his name? It's Dwayne Wade, right?
Dwayne. What was his last name? Dwayne. Wasn't it Dwayne?
I
It
don't know.
was
I
like,
get confused. Y'all, there's so many black celebrities out here. Dwayne Wade.
and he did the
His
poor
highest aspiration was go
accent.
work for Konichiwa Industries. And we know, Japanese people hate black people. It's a racist, xenophobic culture. And all he wanted to do is go work for Konichiwa. And when he couldn't get a job at Konichiwa, what did he end up doing? Did he go and build up his own industry? No, he went and worked at Hillman to help other black folks get a good job at Konichiwa. And you'll notice, especially in a lot of the dialogues between him and Sinbad. And he was always explaining, because they had like a community center or some inner city school that was adjacent to Hillman. And they were like, well, we got to help these kids make it out of here, make it out of here. And you go find another functional population where their highest aspirations and evidence of their success is making it out of and leaving their community. And there's no such thing as giving back to or investing in your community. To invest means that you put less into than you get out. If you are an investor, that means you want to put in as little as possible to get out as much as possible. If you put in an amount of effort and you get out less than that, you are a failed investor. If you break even, you are a failed investor. Investment means I put in as little as possible. I buy the share at $2 and then I sell it at $20, meaning I extract more than I put in. And we keep having these black wealthy people from Bill Cosby and his ilk come say, I'm going to reinvest in my community. And we get pissed off when shit is worse off than when they left, than before they came. We don't need investment. Investing is a parasitic relationship. I have an alderman here and I go into my alderman's office and all that alder person can think to do is, I want Walmart to come here. I want McDonald's to, and more black entrepreneurship and for investment in my community. And the community keeps declining. Well, it's not declining because it's gentrifying. But you don't ever hear people talking about investing in white communities. Yeah. Investment is a parasitic relationship. Also, you don't give back to people when they don't even hide their language. I'm going to reinvest in my community, which means I'm going to extract more from my community than I plan to put in it. I'll give away some turkeys, get some tax breaks, and then I'll have all this fame and social capital that I can go and spend and further exploit my people. Giving back means, first of all, you've left somebody behind. So what you do is, again, you have to, if you're not in the community, you cannot help or save a community that you are not within. So rich black people, there's enough wealthy black people to go out here and create what they call an enclave. That has happened before, called Shriver's Row in Harlem, and other wealthy black. There was a time that if you were a black person that had stature and status, you would still live within the black community, and you would go within the black community and create an area within that black community for the affluent, for the minister, the black doctor, the black judge, the black congressman, and they would live within the community. So what happened to the community, good or bad, they went through it with us. They didn't come from on high, from Beverly Hills, and descend down into the valley to look upon the peasants. They didn't come from Los Angeles Mansion to open a school in Indiana that their kids would never set foot in. So we have to, from a revolutionary Pan-African socialist standpoint, understand that it's all of our struggles have to be from the bottom up, and that we have to have very, very cogent and a very clear and astute class analysis, because that's where it's really hurting us. In the past, it knew, well, white folks and black folks. But now, since Jim Crow, the new Jim Crow, it's not as simple as black folks and white versus white folks. Now it's black folks versus white folks, all these other folks and all these other competing communities, plus wealthy blacks, plus the so-called, as the brother kept saying, conservative blacks. It's a much more complex struggle, and we're in a good position to make progress, but it has to start from our ideology, our analysis. Revolution, this is the last thing I'm going to say, revolution is an intellectual endeavor. And if we don't get the intellectual component correct, all the guns and rioting and uprising and standing all these brothers on social media with shooting guns and all that bullshit, Huey P. Newton Gun Club, not fucking around, coalition, all that is moot. If the intellectual, if the analysis and the ideology that our actions are rooted in are incomplete or inaccurate.
So with that being said, I have a question here because because you just said progress. So she did ask the question, what is progressive? What is that?
Well, progressive within the popular political context means reformist politics, or what is called, some have called New Deal. Progressive, basically in a political context, means that you want to redistribute the resources of the society more evenly. So you
Okay.
don't allow for all the wealth, the best schools, the highest quality, most nutritious food to only be available to those who can afford it. Political progressive say, hey, we need more just distribution of society's resources. You don't put all the best schools in the white neighborhood, you spread it around. That's political progressiveness. Ideological progressiveness means we have to advance our people. So if we're in a state where we've got chronic disease, high rates of violence, high rates of disenfranchisement, progressive means what are the tactics and strategies that we can employ and deploy in order to change these positions, these negative things into positives, and how do we sustain and entrench the positives to prevent them from being subverted or going backwards. So, you'll hear certain congressmen or Bernie Sanders are progressive. So in that arena, so in that context, because believe it or not, you do have a lot of regressive Black militants. I think a good example of that is like he recently died was what's his name? Mugabe. Mugabe in Africa was a Black guerrilla who took up arms to fight against white colonizers. But he was not progressive. When he came into government, he instituted regressive reactionary policies. He was a Roman Catholic. He was an African revolutionary, but still became a Roman Catholic. And so he was in power for 30 years, and then he started to enhance or advance more progressive policies. Like he said, he wanted to redistribute the land. So, but for 30 years, he was a radical Black militant, but his policies were not progressive. So we have a lot of Black militants, what I call Afro Puritans or Afro sexists, and that talk about, oh, they want to create a Black reproduction of Western patriarchal capitalistic views. So you have Black people, I want what's good for my people, but I want to open businesses. So you have Black reactionaries or Black regressive that are pro-Black. You got people like Farrakhan's probably the most ideal example. If you really look into, I believe he's honest when he called white folks devils and he don't like white folks and all that, but his ideology and his proposed solutions are extremely regressive. And I don't think people pay attention. People always tell me how much they love Farrakhan, and every time I quote Farrakhan, they looking at me like, what? So I just think they like his brand, I guess. They don't really listen to the shit he says or read the shit.
Isn't that just like tie it back to status? Like that's tie back to because the mass groups of people have put value into him, then that gives him the clout in a sense.
So you can be militant, you can be pro-Black, but you can also be reactionary or regressive. So progression simply means that we advance. It's also a scientific point of view saying that as we get new evidence, as we get new understandings, we employ and apply those new understandings, even if those new evidences and new understandings contradict what we current or recently held before. So progressivism has a lot of components depending, but political progressivism, where we can rest, is the more just redistribution of power and resources within a society.
Okay. So I'll take a few more questions here. So Pumain says, so are we saying that Cosby shows had no positive effects? Wouldn't a show with Black struggle further normalize that lifestyle subconsciously?
When you say Black struggle, I think when you say Black struggle, you're thinking in terms of good times. You're thinking in terms of Black people not having adequate resources and living in substandard condition. That's not Black struggle. Black struggle is Black people organizing and conspiring to overthrow our enemies and defeat our enemies. So a movie about Black struggle is a movie like Quilombo, about the establishment of the free states in Brazil, set up by the Quilombo, set up by slaves who had liberated themselves. So a show about quote unquote Black struggle is what we need. And if we don't have that, we need to lend our understanding to that. Black struggle is not us, living in roach infested. Now that's a term, because it's really disgusting how they've corrupted revolutionary terms. Hotep is now a bad word, and struggle is now a bad word. So you're talking about a show about Black poverty. You're talking about a show of Black suffering. You're not talking about a show of Black poverty. You'll go back in the 70s, you'll notice they had record labels of Pan-African revolutionaries and roots reggae, Rastafari, Garveyites. They would call their record labels struggle records. There were literally revolutionary groups called the strugglers. You were defined to be engaged in struggle when you were either politically, ideologically, socially, culturally, or even militarily taking up arms and fighting against unjust institutions. So now I don't want no struggle love. So now struggle is a bad word, when struggle is what we've been doing. Our most celebrated heroes are people who struggled. So we need to stop bastardizing that word struggle. Struggle does not mean poverty. There's a lot of people in poverty who are very passive and very peaceful under poverty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there are people with resources who have very, very bad conditions. Red table talk. Black people who live with enormous amounts of dysfunction, got all the money, nice cars, and chartered planes they could wish for, but live under extreme dysfunction and maladaptation. But we don't call them struggle because they got 40-carat diamond rings. So struggle means to stand in opposition. Revolutionary struggle against colonialism, struggle against capitalism, struggle against hyper exploitation, struggle against the destruction of the planet's ecosystem. Struggle is not eating a butter sandwich for dinner. That's poverty. So a show that showed true Black struggle, Black people organizing and conspiring against our enemies, would be very, very helpful and healthy.
Right. Because I mean, that is the Cosby Show, all these other shows like Fresh Prince, all of those shows, right? That was a subconscious programming. So I agree with you, because I think we end up looking for that representation, but that representation is tied to those Western values. So we want to be represented again, and it's blackface. We want to be represented as Europeans in blackface. So
right. And like I said, if you go outside the United States, they use struggle in the proper context. The Nigerian Afrobeat icon, Seun Kuti, Fela Kuti's son, came out with an album called Struggle Music. If you listen to songs about resistance from the Caribbean and Latin America, they talk about struggle. Struggle was an honorable thing. It was dishonorable not to struggle, because the opposite of struggle means to submit. The opposite of struggle means to submit. So what the show he's suggesting is a show about submission. We have to stop allowing them to be, I don't struggle, which means I don't take up arms. I don't organize. I don't conspire. I have no desire to upend this system. That's what not struggling means. It doesn't mean you can afford your multivitamins for your children. It doesn't mean your husband, your swag matches your husband's swag and y'all got matching Bentleys, so y'all not struggle. You can have all of that shit and still be in full-blown submission.
And I don't really know if this was, I don't think it was a question, but I just wanted to highlight it because I think it is something that we do need to have a conversation about. And I mean, maybe briefly you can explain. I'm trying to get to it. Let's see. Explain to us the difference here. Where is it? I just had it. Oh yeah, the distinction between co-op economics and entrepreneurship, which is individualism. So do you think entrepreneurship, that's a more of an individualistic approach?
Entrepreneurs are parasites. Entrepreneurialism is parasitism. It is extractive. Cooperative economics means that everyone that puts in gets out. Cooperation means people share the burden and they share the benefits. Entrepreneurialism means other people do the work and you derive the profit. Profit is theft. If you work for something, I know a lot of people who work and believe they're a capitalist. Capitalism means that you are making unearned income. If you are doing the work, you are not a capitalist. You might own a business. I've owned several businesses. When my wife and I owned a vegan restaurant and had a vegan catering company, we ran it as a cooperative, meaning that after the bills were paid, after the wages were paid, my wife and I received a wage, our employees received a wage. After all that was come, the profit was redistributed amongst everyone who participated. And it was thriving. And then we sold the business to a man who said he would run it as a cooperative, but then ran it as an entrepreneurial enterprise and ended up losing it.
Yeah.
Ended up going defunct in less than a year. You know, so cooperative economics are really, and so here's the thing, you know, this brother who wants to be a capitalist, envisioned himself to be a capitalist, would always say to me, oh, you want to take away capitalism, what do you replace it with? I said, you don't need to replace it. That's literally like saying, I removed this leech from my flesh. What do I replace the leech with? Because whenever you get a job, the first thing they tell you is what? We're a family. We work together. They want you to get a mug with the company logo. They want you to come to the company picnic. They have little birthday parties in the weight room. We run our company like a family. Why? Because communal cooperation is the only way to produce anything of grand scale. Cooperation, coordination, sharing is the only thing. So if you went to your job, your capitalist company, and behaved like a capitalist employee, they would fire you. If you hoarded all the materials, if you didn't share your insights and understanding, if you saw everyone in your workspace as hostile, and you were there with your own enlightened self-interest, they would fire your ass. And I don't care if you work for Tesla or any capitalist, because capitalism produces nothing. Capitalism does not produce things. Socialism is the only way to produce anything. If human beings, because you are a manufacturer and let's say you need lithium. So the lithium miners are essential to your battery business. So let's say you and the lithium people didn't want to coordinate, didn't want to share, weren't willing to work together, negotiate, didn't agree on how to package, manufacture, to ship. So the economy is socialist. Capitalism is a parasite that attaches itself. What capitalism says is, my favorite example, Donald Trump. What is his business?
Oh, what Donald Trump businesses?
Yeah. He's a real estate mogul, right? He made billions in real estate, quote unquote, right? Is he a carpenter? Is he a bricklayer? Is he an electrician? Would you walk into a building that Donald Trump built? If Donald Trump didn't build the building, how is he a builder? How does he make money off of real estate? Does the electrician need Donald Trump to make the building? Does the electrician, imagine if you lived in a building where the electrician was being capitalist competition against the carpenter, and the carpenter was in capitalist competition against the bricklayer. So all these people come to work together as a unit, and what becomes of their collective work? One bloated piece of shit gets control. He gets a piece of paper that says, I own this. Let's look at Amazon. Does Bezos manufacture any of the shit that he distributes? Does Bezos deliver? Does Bezos go to anybody's doorstep? Does he package? Does he load the trucks? Does he unload the trucks? Does he gas up the trucks? What did Bezos do? Did he invent the internet? Did he invent online shopping? What did Bezos do? He has a piece of paper that says, this is my intellectual property, and I have people over here with guns that will kill you if you don't agree with it. This whole society runs off of socialism, coordinated, cooperated labor. But the laborers do not get the profits. The laborers produce the wealth. The capitalists exploit it. They extract the wealth. And it's nothing but a signatures on paper. It's nothing but a deed. There's people who own property all over Chicago who've never set foot in Chicago. But they own property. They don't vacuum the floors. They don't do nothing. They just have paper. I worked in healthcare for 13 years as a radiographer. There were people making more money than me. I went to work every day, saw the broken bones, saw the bullet wounds, right? And I'm there helping people. And there's people who never set foot in that hospital, who didn't even live in the United States, never came into contact with the patient, making all the money somewhere on the French Riviera. That's what capitalism is. Capitalism replaced monarchy. It was a time where they said, you give all your wealth to this man in a crown sitting on the throne because he has what is called the divine right of kings. The divine right of kings. So when I'm a peasant working the field, I give my money and give my taxation over to this man because he has the divine right of God, has put him on the throne. Now we have what is called the divine right of capital. So now I have pieces of paper, shares in stock. I have a deed. I have fiat paper currency that says all this physical work y'all doing all over the world, all the shit off the top comes to me. And it's enforced the same way. And we look at peasants from medieval Europe. We look at peasants. We look at Roman plebeians who sit in who work all day and slave all day and then go sit in the arena and watch gladiators destroy each other. And we think we're more advanced than them. We look at history like, look at them primitive people. And then we go work all day and take our arthritic broken bodies to watch football. Except we don't have to go to the Coliseum. They beam the Coliseum into our homes on our giant screen TVs. Yeah. Michael Jordan, why does he get more money than the people who manufacture the shoes? Because his name is on it? So what do you want? Do you want the name of Michael Jordan on your feet, or do you want quality shoes on your feet? If you had to give one up, we're going to take the name off, or we're going to take the shoe and you keep the name. Which one you going to want? You're going to want the damn shoe. So without Jordan's name on it, Jordan did not do $1 billion worth of work. Jordan has made money off of them shoes. And where are the shoes made? By enslaved people in Haiti, Indonesia, and China in sweatshops. And we admire Jordan. He's the scum of the earth. He's a parasite. And yes, okay, you like seeing somebody chase and dunk a ball, right? But I lived in New York City when the garbage workers went on strike. And I lived in New York when the NBA went on strike. Guess which one hurt my life more? The garbage workers going on strike was much more disruptive to my life than the NBA lockout was. Or the Major League Baseball war. I don't think they had an NFL strike in my life. Them dudes are too brain damaged to pull that off, I guess. I don't know. But I don't watch none of that shit. I don't watch it. But our system of values, our perception of reality is warped. We already live in a socialist system. We just need to make sure that the wealth and revenues and status that comes as a result of our work comes back to us. And I don't care your intellectual property, the people who have stock in Uber that don't drive no damn cars. Never drove nobody. People riding around in Uber, and the people drive. And guess what? These white boys making all this money, everything they're doing, Airbnb, those are things they outlaw. Black people used to have boarding homes. They stole that from us. I lived in New York. I moved to New York. I've been going to New York since 88. And I moved there in 92. Lived there for over a decade. Gypsy vans, dollar vans, brown cabs, off books. Black people did that. Even this quiet quitting. You heard of quiet quitting?
Yeah.
They stole that from us. Black people, hey, I just do my job and do what I'm here to do, get my money and get the hell out of here. And when black people was quiet quitting, it was considered, oh, you don't have a proper worth ethic. You don't have a proper value system. As soon as white folks do it, eureka. I mean, I have to, since Dick Gregory has passed on, I have to steal his line. What is this? He would always say, what's this game about? You know, what's this game about? So yes, we already have socialism. We just have to purge capitalism. When you look at places that have socialist revolutions or socialist uprisings, what happens? The rich people get on their boats and planes and leave the country, and then the country continues to operate as it always has until the rich people get the military to come. Most revolutions, major revolutions, were nonviolent. The violence that comes with revolution isn't from the revolutionaries. The violence of the revolution generally comes from people, the elites trying to retake their position. If you look at Eastern Europe and the Bolshevik uprising, if you look at Latin America. So anyway, but that's like, I'm getting too off. Yeah, wait, we'll be back to Cosby scum, different world, ain't all that.
It reminds me, what you were saying, it reminds me of the movie, The Founder. And if you ever been in
I haven't seen that.
It's a movie about how the guy who
McDonald's
took McDonald's.
Yeah, my wife talk about that all the time. She talks about,
there's a line where the guy tells him, he's like, you're in the wrong, because he's about to lose it. He's about to lose it all. And he says, you're in the wrong business. He says, you're not in the food industry business. You are in the real estate business. And so then he started learning how to, like, with the different franchises, he started making the people who were buying into the franchise, they had to like lease the actual McDonald's for him. So he that's who, he took it to another level. But like the way that they portrayed the guy, he was like a dirty dude, like he was no good. But the way that people talk about him, they talk about him like he's just one of the most amazing men that ever, stepped forward.
Scumbag.
Right.
I mean, this is a system that not only favors sociopaths, it creates sociopaths. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the study that says, people, psychopaths and sociopaths are overrepresented. Like in the normal workforce, they're less than 5% of the normal workforce. But when you get up to the upper level CEOs and management, the number of sociopaths and psychopaths more than quadruples. So, this system, and there was even, I can't remember his name, but there was basically the social scientist says, if you want to succeed in the United States, you have to identify what pathology you have and revert that pathology. If you have an obsessive compulsive disorder or some type of other malady, you reorient that towards money and you will succeed, because I mean, if you hoard cats, if you hoard newspapers, we call you insane. But if you hoard money, fiat, then we make you president, or we call you #goals. But the people who hoard money are no more healthy than the people who hoard cats. They're just as dysfunctional. And we have these sick type of people, the Bezos, running the world. And Dave Chappelle's homeboy, Elon Musk. Who didn't invent electric cars, didn't invent Tesla, didn't invent PayPal, didn't invent shit. Just used his daddy's South African emerald mine money to buy into these companies and expel people, failing upwards. But yeah, we're not going to be, it's a bad thing and a good thing at the same time. Black people, we really suck at capitalism. We've been trying to do capitalism. The Negro as Capitalist is a 100-year-old book. We've been trying to do capitalism for over a century, and we never quite got good at it. And that's a blessing and a curse, because capitalism is omnicidal. Capitalism means consume everything to a collapse. That's what capitalism is: accumulate and consume. And you can't, whereas we need a system of renewal. We need a sustainable renewal system, not a system of concentration and hyperconsumption. So,
I mean, is that because, I mean, is it because we're still trying to compete though? Because we're trying to compete with people who, it's almost like there's not a competition, and and to compete means to actually be able, for lack of a better word, like destroy the other person who you are competing against. So
that's not what capitalism is not about competition. That's
okay.
another myth. It's like American Constitution is about democracy and it was written by slavers. Capitalism is about conquest and defeat, not competition.
Okay.
You know, competition is, okay, you and I start here and we're going to race to the corner. And when I get to the end, if I get to that end before you, then you get the prize or I get the prize. That's not, this is a system of a conquest. Capitalism has never been about competition. Where did they arrive on any shore? Where did these Europeans arrive at anybody's shore and say, hey, I'm going to outwork you? No, I'm going to enslave you and make you work for me. That's not competition.
Yeah.
But we believe that. They want workers to work competition. Okay, you can work, you both work in a cubicle and hey, so-and-so stayed over 2 or 3 hours. So we engage in competition thinking that'll help us elevate in capitalism. But you can't tell me a capitalist that competed their way to the top. You can lie, steal, kill, rape, and pillage your way to the top. But if you're simply engaged in competition, you are a laborer.
Yeah.
You are a proletariat. The bourgeoisie do not compete. They don't allow for competition. You know, there's a good book that's kind of fell out of favor called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And he talks in detail about how the United States doesn't compete with other nations. They subvert and undermine other nations if they cannot control and direct them. And it's the same thing on a smaller scale in terms of industries. Look at these multinational corporations. Facebook competed with Instagram, or did they buy it?
Wait, was it who bought Facebook? Bought Instagram, I think,
and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So capitalism is about consuming your competition, not competing with your competition.
Yeah, there's many levels that we can go to with that. So it is top of the hour. If there's no questions, she said, if you watch Game of Thrones, you see different types of whites competing for the throne. Is that show whiteness in a nutshell? Or are you familiar with Game of Thrones?
I love Game of Thrones. I've seen every episode.
Oh yeah, we watched Game of Thrones too.
I like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so
but yeah, it is whiteness, but we don't even get the dragons and magic. We got some old mundane ass shit, you know. So yeah, I wish if y'all gonna kill the world and oppress the world, at least give us some goddamn dragons and shit. And man, you know, yeah, it's like just all the bad parts of Game of Thrones, the incest and murder and espionage. We got all that, but we don't got none of the magic. So it's worse than that.
Yeah.
You know, if there was dragons around, I'd be like, chill out, black folks. You know, I know it's bad. I know we're suffering, but dragons, you know, that shit is awesome. So it's all the worst parts. The real world is all the worst parts. But a lot of that writing comes out of actual medieval, the incest, the cannibalism and ritual killings and all that shit. That is a reflective of Western mentality, Western culture.
Yeah. I mean, and so you know, I'll end with this because I know a lot of people. There was someone had posted on when I had talked about the black versions of Europeans. So I had used the image of the Cosbys. And one of the things, and when I realized like I was going to do a conversation about this, it was referring to one of the comments. I'm going to read the comments. Read the comment because I thought it was an interesting comment. Let me see if I can get it real quick. Let's see here. And here it is. Okay. So the comment, you know, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they were saying that we are Americans. What is it being or acting Black in America? This is what we know. We are Americans. We do American things. What are white things Black people are not supposed to do? We are free to do what we want. We are not Black people that can in other countries. 98% of Black Americans have never visited Africa. We American-born Black people are not Africans. We identify who we are in America, and why bring up religion? Also, I'm insulted by the cover page of the Huxtables as a negative. The Huxtables are here, Jack and Jill of America.
Are we supposed to respond to that? Who said that? Who said that?
It was someone in my comment section. And so that's when I realized I was just going to do a conversation, because I had just did like a short clip about Black versions of Europeans, but that's a theme, because a lot of people will ask, like, well, why are you pointing out Bill Cosby? Why are you pointing out the Huxtables? Which is, that's why I called it, kind of the Cosby effect, because it's coming out of that. It's the programming. It's the acceptance of the full integration of society. So now you do have Black people, you hear them saying, we are Americans, you don't.
That's true. Well, we're not Americans. There's no such thing as American, because we are citizens of the United States of America. We're citizens of the United States. So a Jamaican is an American because they're in the Western Hemisphere. Someone from Panama, a Peruvian, is an America. Inuit Eskimo is an Inuit is American. A Canadian is an American. So what are we truly? We are citizens of the United States. But because of the way the United States was founded in construction, there are tiers of citizenship. So what I have to explain to Black people is we are less citizens of the United States of America, and we're more, in terms of our status, subject of the American or Western empire. We are subject because to be a citizen means all rights and protections are granted to us. But when the so-called civil servants are allowed to kill us with impunity, when the nation state itself has stolen over $1 trillion worth of our land, labor, and wealth, and when I say over $1 trillion, I'm not counting chattel slavery. I mean in the post-slavery era. There's been over $1 trillion of theft through the redlining, through the expulsion of Southern land. We act like Black people leaving the South was because we all just got the itch to come up north to pursue our dreams. Black people were ethnically cleansed from the South. My family came up with the Exodusters, came up from the Louisiana, and got driven out of the Virginias after slavery. My family was enslaved on the Virginia coast. My family name is Jefferson. That's my family name, Jefferson. They were brought from the coast and brought into the intern, and then driven out of the deep South when the whites had no longer had rights from us. My wife's people came up from Mississippi. They didn't just say, this Mississippi sun's too hot, let's head up yonder. And there's that silly book, The Warmth of Other Suns. We were ethnically cleansed, just like we're being expelled from the cities back to the South. So we, in our experience, on paper, to whatever paper value, you are a citizen of the United States. There is no such nationality or identity as American. America is 2 continents, North and South, in the Western Hemisphere, which how you get west on the globe, but that's for white folks to figure out. We are, so that puts you geographically where you are. It doesn't tell you culturally, ethnically, historically, or ideologically who you are. So if you stop at America, you're a whole bunch of nothing. And we are actually function as subjects of the empire, meaning that we don't have our standings and our rights are not fully actualized or respected by the states and the institutions, and that we stand more in the status of a Zimbabwean, a Venezuelan, a Nigerian. We have more alignment with them. So if the United States goes off to war and attacks and invades Afghanistan or Iraq, and we're rooting for the United States as if that's the side that best represents us, we are foolish. Like Richard Pryor said, I don't want white folks to win nothing because their victories are our losses.
Right.
And when we understand that, When we understand that black people only came out of chattel slavery, but our oppressors understood that. If you look at the policy and practices that changed under chattel slavery when the Haitians revolted and got liberated, and the Haitians said we will have no business with the United States until they stop enslaving black people on their land. And when the Southern cotton, the Southern cotton growers during the Civil War were shipping their cotton overseas, and the laborers in the foreign land says, we won't unload that cotton from the boat. We won't touch it because it was harvested by enslaved people. So we have to understand, and we always forget this, when we were fighting the civil rights struggle, and the United States would go overseas and says, hey, let's do business in Africa. And the African says, no, we're going to go do business with the Soviet Union. We don't see them water hosing black people in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And there were Black Panther parties all over Africa and Latin America and even in Asia. Black people in this United States, our progress has always been aligned with the so-called third world, with the so-called global South, with the so-called oppressed people. White people have economic booms. White people have all this white folks won World War II and dancing in the streets and still lynching our ancestors while they wore their military uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
So if you call yourself an American, you are self-hating and ignorant, because our rise and fall has been more consistent with Africans, Latin Americans, Caribbean people than it has been with my fellow Americans. White people elevate and repress us even more aggressively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even when white people are suffering from opioid epidemics and they're suffering from all this shit, they scapegoat us. White people are getting kicked out of their homes. They had they did a crack epidemic on us, and then they did an opiate epidemic, their own elites.
Mm-hmm.
And white folks are getting screwed over by white capitalists, and they want the white capitalists to build them a wall. So even when white people suffer, they still attack us when we had nothing to do with their suffering. And if they don't attack us, they attacked our brothers and sisters. And I ain't even going to get into how them white conquistadors from south of the border come here and all of a sudden become Latinos and Hispanics. When all their life, when they were south of the border, they were white people. They were Spaniards.
Right.
That's a whole hustle on us.
Mm-hmm.
You got the goddamn refugee camps where the white Hispanics in the refugee camps are still trying to flaunt and get a better cot than the black Afro-Latinos, than the natives. I mean, it's shit. Our solidarity is with the global African community. Our real identity and status is African diaspora. We are members of the African diaspora. We are the offspring and descendants of people who were forcefully removed to their land. And wherever we go, we didn't break from Africa, we expanded Africa. So Black culture in America is an expansion of African culture. Black culture in Jamaica, Trinidad, Black culture in Central and South Mexico, where there are more Black people. There are over 1 million Black people in Mexico. When Black people were running off of plantations here in the United States, and they were like, I'm leaving a Texas plantation, and I'm about to go through 1,200 miles of hostile territory, or I can go 10 miles south and be in free country. Many of our ancestors, our blood ancestors, went to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go north. That was foolish. They didn't run the camp. It's a whole population in Nova Scotia of African Baptists, Black people in Nova Scotia, the Black Americans who fought against the U.S. in the Revolutionary War. Our ancestors, same blood, fought against the U.S. on behalf of the British, because the British said, if you fight with us on the Revolutionary War, we'll free you. And when the tide turned, they had to get all them Black people out there, because white people said, in war, we don't take Black prisoners. We'll take white prisoners of war, but we kill the Blacks on sight. So the only difference between Black people in the United States, Caribbean, is a boat stop. And we got these ADOS scumbags and these foundational Black American scumbags out here pushing this jingoistic views, trying to isolate us. If we stop with this allowing other people to define us, how the hell are we going to define ourselves by borders somebody else drew?
Right.
So that whoever wrote that message is a Negro who is out of their mind. And we keep people like that at arm's length until they go through a cycle of healing.
Yeah.
It has been enough time to vet them to see that they are no longer as pathological in their thinking and disposition. But that is a Negro who is out of their mind.
So with that, we're gonna end. Brother Diallo, I think most people who are here know who you are, but just tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you.
You can just at Diallo Kenyatta across all the social medias. That's at Diallo Kenyatta, Facebook, Insta, Twitter, YouTube, Diallo Kenyatta.
Okay.
And I have a radio broadcast that I do here. If you're here in Chicago, it's a low power underground FM radio station. The Bro Diallo Show on Monday morning, 7 a.m. on your morning commute. If you're outside of Chicago, you can listen at on my socials, or you can go to q4.org to hear my show. I also have a Black Power Media broadcast that I co-host with Dr. Jerry Barr and Geechee Y'all. You can catch that Friday mornings at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, where Geechee and Jared make assertions, and I just explain to them why they're wrong. So if you want to see three dudes arguing all morning, come over there. It's a very good and enlightening show, with real scholarship and insight. So that's where you can find me. Also, Wednesday nights I do a call-in radio show at the same Q4. So but if you go at Diallo Kenyatta, you'll see all of it. It's a lot. Or DialloKenyatta.com. Or African World Order, if you want to get merch, t-shirts and stuff like that. African World Order.
Do you have a wireless woman? She's asking if you have a TikTok.
No. Everybody been telling me to get TikTok. But my homie, my OG homie from back in the day, Rip the Crip, Rip's World, you can go to his TikTok. It's freaking hilarious. That's my day one homie. He has a TikTok, and he told me to get one, but I don't know how to do. You see how old I'm old. I'm about to. You see this cardigan sweater and this cup of hot tea? I'm about to go snuggle into the couch and go to bed. You guys can't be messing with that new stuff.
I barely have time. I barely have time to mess with it. But
you got time for that.
It's too many of them. But
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, y'all keep coming up with news. As soon as I get on TikTok, y'all gonna come up with something else.
Right.
I barely want to do Instagram.
They said Instagram and Snapchat now. That's for the old folks. So
it is, and that's where I am. I stay in my lane, stay in yours.
Right. So
I only post pictures to Instagram. I think today was the first time I posted a video. I thought Instagram was for pictures. What the hell? Every time I go on there, all I see is videos. What is going on?
It's all about the reels and the stories now.
Right.
Yep.
And I ain't even gonna complain. Let me not get on.
Right, but
I'm of the age I can tell the weather by the aches in my bones. So
well, I do appreciate this conversation. I'll have to have you back on to have other conversations because
anytime.
I mean we touched on a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm sorry I got off topic. I'm sorry.
No,
I got notes here and everything, and I didn't stick. I'm sorry.
that's how these conversations go. But just leave the people, us everyday folk, with how we can be a radical Pan-African in our everyday lives. Leave us with that.
All right. My baseline is you try to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of your people. That's the bottom line. And depending on where you are, what community you live in, what resources you have available to you, because Black people have so many issues or deficits, you can anything. If you're an artist, if you're into the creatives edge of things, if you're into politics, histories, if you like little babies or you like hanging out with old folks, there's so many ways for you to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations, our health and well-being, our education, organizing and uniting people. A lot of times in your community, you have one person struggling and even in their business, and you can unite them with other people, or you can sit down and conspire to overthrow the whole system and create a mass revolutionary Pan-African organization. Just make a positive, take it upon yourself, it's ongoing on a day-to-day level, but in your overall life, to make a positive attribution to the just aspirations of African people. And you've done your duty. And beyond that, enjoy the things you enjoy. And like Game of Thrones or Xbox, I don't be sitting here, going off on white folks and Uncle Toms all day. I have a lot of things I enjoy doing and enjoy my family. Places I'll be in Los Angeles in February, I think. And then Atlanta. I hate Atlanta, but I gotta go. And I gotta go to Atlanta. So, you can get out and see the world. It's our planet anyway. Now I'm starting to sound like a regressive. This is all we're gonna create, an African empire.
Shout out to my city, Atlanta.
Black supremacy. Anyway, but enjoy your life. Renew, engage in daily renewal and monthly and renewal. Build, healthy relationships with other African people. Based on more than just struggle, as the guy said, based on mutual benefit and upliftment. As Del Jones said, it's a privilege to be African, but Africans must unite.
Yes. Well, I do appreciate that. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you coming to my platform. And so with that being said, right.
Oh, y'all live in Atlanta?
I do. Now I'm from Louisiana.
Oh, good.
But, we moved here a couple years ago. But
okay. Yeah. So, it's a little better now, I'm sure, now that y'all there. It's just a little sunnier.
It got down to 8 degrees last
Really?
week? Yes, it was crazy. Like pipes were bursting all over the city.
global warming. But okay. So we'll get some oat milk lattes when I come. You can meet my wife. I can meet your husband.
Oh yeah, we're vegan, so we know.
Really? Okay, yeah.
We know all the good places.
So we'll be there for about a week or so. No, less than a week. Hopefully, less than a week. I don't know. I don't do nothing. I'm a husband too, so I don't do nothing until my wife comes. Pack a bag. We going. I don't know. So, look at you shaking your head. Yapo.
You be planning the whole.
Your way, Yapo.
Yeah.
All your life you had to fight, didn't you? Anyway.
All right.
I do the same. Yeah.
Yes, appreciate.
I'll be in Atlanta. Let's get some oat milk lattes.
Yeah. That'll be good. So just let us know, or I'll just send me a message and we can get together.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, family, that is the end. I enjoyed you all in the chat. Y'all were doing some talking. Thank you for that. But yes, we're gonna have to have more conversations.
Yeah.
And
anytime, especially to hate on Bill Cosby, I'm there.
Yeah. Are you open to having conversations with some of the brothers that I'm a shout out to Brother Talawa? Are you open to that?
With who? Some Uncle Toms? Some
no. Brother Talawa.
Licking, coonified.
No, I don't have conversations with
Oh, I thought you was like, somebody trying to.
No. Just people. I think there's just a little, you have like little differences. Because there's some people who also just little differences, nothing major. I watch Black Power Media from time to time, and I see y'all don't always agree.
Oh, so yes, we do. We are me and Geechee and Dr. Ball, we are aligned. Brothers must unite, unity in the community. But if somebody want to try to debate me, I just look, I'm facts and evidence based.
Yeah.
So
if
you're mad at me or you disagree with me, you just disagree with the facts.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We will. There'll be a little facelift to my MaatSpeaks. I'll let you know if I'll be back next week, but I will be having maybe more one-on-one conversations for now, and then I'll have some I'll have some people come on, like we'll have discussions and things like that. So just keep your eyes tuned to MaatSpeaks, and you'll see what's coming next very soon. But with that being said, peace, family. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks again for the invite.
Thank you.